What was the most fucked up thing you saw at your school? Story 1. One lad in our school had a bit of beef with another kid. Several days, a couple of weeks even, passed, and it was thought that it was all forgotten about. Evidently, though, the lad in question had been secretly making a rudimentary knuckle duster in his metalwork lessons and used it on the lad he thought wronged him. Made a right mess of him, and his punishment was merely a suspension for 2 weeks. Story 2. This one is real fucked up now that I realize how gross it is. Elementary school, it was the teacher's birthday and we had a little party, which part of the celebration was we all lined up and took turns giving her one birthday slap on her rear end. 2 notes worth knowing. One kid slapped super hard and she didn't like that, so it wasn't a pain kink she was into. 2. It was the 80s, so it's probably fine. Story 3. In 6th grade, I saw a bully pushing around a smaller kid, typical bully stuff. The smaller kid clearly had enough and socked the bully in the mouth real good. The bully proceeded to powerbomb the younger kid onto the concrete pad. Ambulance was called and I never saw him again. I think about that to this day when I say to my son to never let anyone push you around. Maybe that's not always solid advice. Story 4. We were told to go out and stand on the outside of the class after a long trip of 2 periods in my school. I assumed it was for another, but they actually did an inspection of us. Turns out, one of us had a vaping device and 3 others had phones, 2 items which are considered contraband in our school. Ended up missing 2 periods and ended up having to be shamed for the faults of 4. Really weird stuff. Story 5. Classmate got beat up in the bathroom after confessing to his best friend why he really borrowed almost $300, to us it's like $70K, to pay back his dealer he stole from. Got his nose broken, black eye and a rib cracked. The fright he stole from then went and raided him out to said dealer, who later broke into his home with 5 other guys and sent him to the hospital for a month. He was 16 at the time. Story 6. So it was very early in the morning, around 6:30, 7 a.m. My then, and the first, GF and I decided to meet early at the school since it was our first Valentine's. So, we met and decided to go to an empty classroom and make out. So we did. And then I saw one of our teachers staring at me through the window when we were making out. Don't know what was she doing so early in the morning at the school though. Story 7. Grade school. One of the disturbed kids picked up a chair and swung it, full force, into the teacher's head and chest. She went down and hit the floor with a sickening thud. I can still remember the sound of the chair connecting with her, and the sound of her hitting the floor. She was out for 8 weeks, we had a sub, and the chair swinger got expelled and the authorities sent him to a residential program. Story 8. I was in 6th grade, around 11 or 12, when we were dismantling an indoor volleyball net. Guy climbed up onto one of the poles, slipped and fell, got caught on one of the hooks that hold the net and tore off his scrotum. Teacher called an ambulance called a helicopter, kid was flown to a hospital and everything was stitched back together. He came back to school 4 weeks later with no permanent damage. Story 9. I made a joke to him about staying away from the seaside stairs near the cafeteria, and he said, "You mean blowjob corner?" They put cameras in because of that. Given the fact that it still has the same nickname 30 years later, I wonder if the cameras actually deterred any of the activity or if there's a security guard who now has an ever-growing collection of CP. All things considered, I'd say the odds are 50-50. Story 10. Went to school with a kid that had an aggressive behavior disorder and I watched him chase a kid down the hall. He threw his backpack full of books at him which flew everywhere. While trying to scramble to get up, the kid that was targeted was lunged at and then the aggressor took a book and pummeled this kid. The kid who was attacked was okay, a concussion and stitches, but it was fucking terrifying to watch. Story 11. In the 4th grade, you had a day called Underground Railroad Day and the teachers made you do chores and stuff around the classroom, and they'd occasionally leave, so you could escape. If you got caught you had to stay in the classroom, if you escaped you got to have food and watch a movie in the afternoon separately from everyone else. Was not a diverse school at all, if you understand, super fucked up. Story 12, in grade 2 my teacher made all students step on a child as they walked into class, because he left his lunchbox on the steps in front of the class. This child was mixed race, and this was in the 80s and in apartheid South Africa. Those who refused got hit with a cane for not listening to their teacher. Supremely messed up, and I will never forget it. She was fired a year or two later for various messed up things. Story 13, a new kid at our school grabbed the art teacher's scissors and threw them over a dividing wall when the teacher left the room. They hit some girl in a different art class on the other side and one of the blades went through her cheek. We were held after class until he finally confessed, and we saw the police at the school later. He had been at our school for about a week, and we never saw him again after that day. Story 14, my brother was playing basketball at recess with his friends and the gym teacher. The teacher dropped dead right in front of them of a heart attack. He was in the 5 to 6 building up the hill from our elementary school, where I was attending. I remember a helicopter landing at his school, and all of us little kids were wondering what was going on. My brother is in his 50s now, and still talks about it from time to time. Story 15, not at the school, but my friend in my French class. His whole family, him, 9-year-old brother and his mother, was killed by his father, who has a PTSD episode on Christmas morning. Father also killed himself after his spree. At school, I watched one kid shove a kid down the stairs. He fell, hit his head and started seizing. The kid who pushed him rushed down and kept pummeling him, while the other one was seizing. Story 16, didn't see, but happened at my high school, which I lived across the street from. Student walked into the middle of the quad and shot himself in the head just before school. But lots of kids were around. Helicopters showed up, numerous emergency vehicles. Then on my first day of freshman year, there was a Black versus Mexican fight involving maybe 100 students. Every year at that school someone died in some tragic way. Story 17, I didn't see it, but a bunch of jerk seniors convinced a special need to do a bunch of bad stuff. They got him to start vaping and then claimed it was his when they were caught. They also got him to stand outside in 20-degree weather, Fahrenheit, saying they were holding a competition to see who could stay outside longest. These are just some of the things they did before they were caught, and it is just horrible. Story 18, middle school, was just chilling with friends, then suddenly a fight between two girls broke out cause one called the other a slut cause her bra strap was showing. Girl got a hold of the other one's hair and slammed her head into a pole, then into the concrete repeatedly, probably close to 10 times, before people pulled her away. The girl on the ground had to be stretchered away and her face was damn near unrecognizable. Story 19, I was in like first grade and we were getting ready to leave class and this girl was wearing this long trench coat and as she was running to the door she tripped on it and smacked her head on the floor and cracked her head open. I've never seen so much blood in my life, it was gushing everywhere and she was screaming. I used to have nightmares of my family members hitting their heads and bleeding out for years after that. Story 20, the army came and took away a very old bomb that was found under the GAA pitch that we'd been playing on for years. It was an industrial school that opened in the 1870s, so who knows how old it was given the history of the country. All the teachers were very hush-hush about it and wouldn't tell anyone that asked what was really happening. Probably worried about being sued, but I trusted the school even less after that. Story 21, I was in elementary school maybe, and there was bunch of 8th graders fooling around a glass door and one of them fall into the glass door and his head break the door's window basically. I remember our teacher sending us away because there was some blood and the guy was really panicked. Luckily, the guy didn't cut himself really bad, but still bad enough for needing a trip to the ER. But he was in school on the next week. Story 22, a student's whole family came in to avenge him being beaten up by older students. Couple older brothers, sisters, and I guess his mom? Could have been some cousins too. There were about 6 of them. They beat up one kid pretty good that they could find. They had chains and brass knuckles. The mom slapped the vice principal around. Then they all went to the bus stop at the front of the school, where the cops arrested them. Story 23, saw a teacher pull a kid out his chair so hard he dislocated his shoulder. Saw a kid beaten nearly to death by bullies on the rugby field at lunch, to the extent that a paramedic helicopter had to land and manage a life-threatening situation. He survived after a coma. Saw a kid vomit so hard on the coach it came out horizontally and showered the girl sitting in front. Outer London comprehensives were so much fun in the 80s. Story 24, I know and I understand it. I was bullied by kids, both my age and older kids, just for no reason. I was not the only one. That was the standard norm, especially for kids older than us. And man, do I wish that I could have fucking beat up any of them and smashed their head in. Too bad they moved like gangs, and if you attack one, all of them would find you after school and beat the shit out of you, which happened to some kids. Please like, subscribe and press the notification bell. It really helps the channel out. Share your stories down below in the comments. Hope you enjoyed.